The weekend Mackenzie spends in the shack, which is the focus center of his loss, his pain, and it represents 11 years of my life in trying to deal with, I use the shack as a metaphor. It's the inside house of the soul. It's the broken heart. It's where we store our addictions that we don't want anybody to know about. It's where we hide all of our secrets. Mm-hmm. It's a house of shame. It's a house of lies. It's broken dreams and dashed hopes. And so we are so ashamed of that. And we're getting such feedback out here that we create a false house, a facade that looks good and plays to the expectations that we perceive to be out there.
It's all performance.
It's all performance, and it's the fundamentally what religion is. And we say, okay, maybe the people in my life will appreciate this if I work out here. Maybe God will even approve of that. The problem is that when you know there's a shack behind it, any approval you get is discounted right off the top. You're just thinking you're fooling them.
Paul, can you take us into your shack? It's not in the book.
It's not, and but it is. The pain in the book's very real. My background, my history, and it's not that foreign for missionary kids to have gone through very difficult situations, especially back in my generations. There was, my parents absolutely loved Jesus. They're committed to the work of God, to missions, but they are young. They were in their 20s, and they were part of a generation that didn't know that they brought baggage with them, right? Mm. So, and they wouldn't have known what to do with it, even if they'd known.
You're too busy doing what God had called them to do.
And a lot of times when you do that, and back there it was almost like God will take care of the details, and children were details. So, my father in particular brought a lot of his baggage. And so, as much as he has touched the lives of people, and he's had a tremendous ministry. He's very much a prayer person. He has affected people and my nieces and nephews, in a way that is remarkable and wonderful. I have a niece who had a very traumatic event happen in her teenage years, and she said, if it wasn't for Grandpa, my father, I would probably hate every man living. Mm-hmm. So he showed up there. But in my experience growing up, it was a very difficult relationship, and on top of that, I'm disconnected.
You were sent to boarding school at 6?
6, yeah. But even in the tribal culture, I was 10 months old when we went in there, and that became my family. The tribal culture became my family, and I was the first person to know the language. I was the informant for the Wycliffe translator when I was 5 years old. And in the culture, sexual abuse started very young. Mm. And I already knew that my parents was not a safe place. So in the midst of that abuse, it's the people who care about me that are the abusers, and you have this divide. And I would, even most of my life, somebody would have said, draw a circle around your family. I'd have drawn it around the tribal people. And amazing. I was disconnected from even my mom. When I came back after first 4 months of boarding school, I called her Aunt Betty, because they had a white woman at boarding school they called Betty. And I figured, okay. And I was around the conversations on whether they were going to kill my parents or not, the ghost people, and I didn't feel in danger myself. Wow. So, you've got a young couple trying to raise a child in an environment they have no clue. There's no training in anthropology or contextualization or anything like that. And I go to boarding school at 6, and the sexual abuse continues there among the student population, as well as a whole bunch of other bad stuff. So what I did with it, I'm a firstborn, and I had such a sense of my own shame, even as a child, that I became a performer. I just put everything into pleasing the people, so I was always trying to be perfect, and not just any kind of performer, perfectionist little thread, the facade of perfectionist performance that covers up this whole ocean of shame.
Where did God in His mercy let this all hit the wall so He could get at that?
Yeah, my 11 years started January 4th, 1994. And that's when I got a phone call from Kim. And I was 38 years old. My 6th child had been born in 93. And this is January 4th, 94. And Kim calls me, confronting me with the fact that she has discovered that I'm in a 3-month affair with one of her best friends. And in fact, to make it worse, it's a woman she had turned to for some counsel during this process when she sensed a separation between me and her. And I had to make a decision to either kill myself or face Kim. And face at that point, the little facade of perfectionist performance. And you have to understand, I'd been pursuing God my whole life. I've been trying to find a way to heal the shack, right? Because I thought God hated it. I thought, you're born again, you're all this, you're supposed to be free, and this whole reality, all this hidden stuff, the addictions, everything is in the shack, and you're out there trying to perform for everybody. And when that confrontation took place, and this little thin layer that protected me from all my shame just blew to a million bits, it was so difficult to try to make the decision to face it. But I knew at that point that I couldn't heal myself. All the religious effort, I could pray or fast, or I could become an ascetic, I could do all of this. It wouldn't heal me. It hadn't ever healed me, and it wasn't seeming to touch it. And I had
Face
to go
and feel was the only alternative.
face and deal with it.
With God.
Yeah. And the part of the beauty in the story is that when I reach for the door of the shack, if Papa doesn't come flying through from inside my stuff, if he is the distant God up in the unapproving, disappointed heaven, I have no hope after that. It's that God emerges from inside and says,
Otherwise you stay stuck.
Otherwise you stay stuck. I can't heal myself. How am I going to come to healing? And so immediately that started a process of dismantling everything. And Kim, frankly, saved my life. And it wasn't because she took a nice, meek, mild, submissive Christian role. She really came at me with every ounce of fury she had. And when I went and talked to her that first day, and we had like 4 12-hour days in a row of me unloading my stuff, because I said, you know what, Kim, if we're going to do this, I can't have any more secrets in my life. Secrets have been killing me my whole life. I can't.
Was there any suggestion that she might leave you?
Oh, yeah. If she didn't want the children, if possible, to grow up without their father. She, as angry and furious as she was, she believed that I broke hard. But if I'd have turned to her and said, some of this is your stuff, if I'd have done that, I'd have been so gone so fast. Kim comes from a very healthy family, large family. And her dad was living with us. He lived with us for 17 years. In fact, his name's Willard, and we called him Willie. He is the Willie in the book, and is Kim's dad. And he died in 2002. But he was in the middle of this. And so I said, we can't hide this. We can't, and I've been doing ministry teaching and all this kind of stuff, and I just said, I'm done. So I started a process where I started counseling with a group that deals with sexual abuse.
One man in particular?
Yeah, Scott Mitchell, who is a graduate from Alberta. And I didn't know that, didn't know him before this, and our lives intersect at that point. And
he told you had to be in for the long haul.
He did. When I first sat in front of him, I said, Scott, I'm done. I'm over. I don't even know how to get to be anymore. Let alone Zed. How does this happen? And can you help me? And he said, yeah, I can, but it's going to take a year and a half. And I said, well, I'm in. He said, well, everybody's in when they're sitting in your spot. But after a couple months, everybody bails out. They don't want to, when it gets right before the really hard stuff, after a couple months, you'll feel, oh, I got some control here. I feel better about myself. He said, then the hard stuff's coming and everybody quits. And I said, well, I'll tell you, this is life or death for me. If I don't get healed, I'm done. So I will not leave this process until you tell me I'm done. And he said,
when did he do that?
9 months later, actually. And he said, we've never had anybody work this hard and stay with it. And I'm going, it's because this is life or death for me. This is not a game. And if I can't deal with all this basic stuff, and it was hard. I got to a place in the middle of that where I lost all my hope. I thought there is nothing here that's of any value. Because what's not a survival skill, and what's not a defense mechanism, and what do? You go back to before you're 4 and try to find something that's real? And how do you know that anything after that has any reality to it, and it's just not a way to protect yourself or try to stay safe, or and you end up manipulating relationships and lying and hiding all your crap, and so what do? And in that moment, in that moment of losing all my hope, I was planning how to kill myself without my children being able to find my body, and it was a pretty dark time. And again, at the places where things get the worst, it seems that God shows up the best. And
I think that's the most important thing
Yeah.
about this book, and I see a genre emerging where authors are bringing God into some of the ugliest, unexpected places,
Yeah.
and giving people who are in that place you're describing the hope that only He can bring.
Yeah. See,